This happened during a quiet night shift at a supermarket. The freezer door opened by itself at exactly 3:13 a.m. But what the security footage captured right after still gives me nightmares. And no, this isn't a ghost story. It's much worse. It started with the freezer doors. Kayla Martinez worked the night shift at Southridge Market, a regional grocery store tucked between an abandoned strip mall and a gas station that always smelled like burnt oil. She had taken the job a few months ago after dropping out of her community college, and despite the mind-numbing boredom of shelving products at 3 a.m., she liked the solitude. The quiet aisles, the hum of industrial lights, the occasional muffled laughter from the cleaning crew. It was all manageable, until the freezer doors began opening by themselves. It had happened once or twice during her first month, but she assumed it was a quirk of the store. The older employees joked about it. Some even gave the phenomenon a nickname, the cold touch. Kayla laughed along, chalking it up to faulty hinges or air pressure differences. But then it started happening every night, right around 3:13 a.m. She didn't notice the pattern at first. Time passed strangely on the graveyard shift. An hour could feel like a minute or a day. But on a particularly slow Tuesday morning, she glanced at her watch just as the meat freezer door creaked open behind her. It was 3:13 a.m. exactly. The door swung open with a groan and slowly began to shut again, as if someone had changed their mind about grabbing a frozen roast. Kayla stood still, chilled by something other than the cold air brushing past her. The next night, she watched for it. She positioned herself between aisles 7 and 8, pretending to restock pancake syrup but really watching the corner where the freezers sat in perfect view. 3:12, nothing. At 3:13, the far left freezer door opened a crack, paused, and then eased open another 2 feet. This time it didn't close. It just stood there, gaping, like a mouth frozen mid-scream. She walked toward it slowly, scanning the aisle. No one. No footsteps. No cold mist on the ground like you'd expect if a door had been open long. She peered inside, half expecting to find a child playing hide and seek or a prankster from the janitorial crew. But there was nothing but racks of frozen pizza and a few ice-encrusted bags of chicken tenders. She shut the door and returned to her cart, but she didn't take her eyes off the freezer corner for the rest of the night. The next evening, she brought it up with Sarah, a sharp-tongued cashier who worked the early morning register. "You ever notice the freezers opening by themselves?" Sarah paused mid-coffee sip. "Oh, you've seen it too?" Kayla blinked. "Wait, you're serious?" "Dead serious," Sarah said, glancing toward the freezers as if afraid they might overhear. "It's not just the freezers either. You ever do inventory in the basement storage?" "No, that's Kyle's job." "Lucky you," Sarah muttered, and turned back to her coffee. That was it. No explanation. No warning. Just that little bit of unease, planted like a seed in Kayla's brain. That night, she arrived 20 minutes early, intent on checking the security footage from the previous shifts. It wasn't hard. The overnight manager, Dean, barely paid attention to anything beyond his fantasy football picks, and the security room's passcode had been scribbled on a sticky note taped to the side of the monitor. She scrubbed through the footage at double speed, watching herself move in jittery fast-forward down the aisles. At exactly 3:13 a.m., she saw the freezer door open behind her. But what caught her breath wasn't the door. It was the shadow. For a split second, as the freezer door swung open, a tall silhouette passed across the camera feed. It wasn't human, not really. It was too thin, too long, like something drawn in haste by a trembling hand. It darted across the screen, almost too fast to register, and then disappeared into aisle 9. Kayla rewound the footage 3 more times, freezing it at just the right moment, but the shape was always the same. A black slash of nothing that shouldn't have been there. She didn't sleep well that morning. By the time Thursday rolled around, Kayla had developed a ritual. She avoided the freezers after 3 a.m., kept earbuds in so she didn't hear any strange noises, and only looked down aisles after peeking around the corners first. It made her slower at her job, but she didn't care. She'd already started applying for a different position at the local bookstore. Anything that didn't involve flickering lights and silent, shadowy figures that didn't show up on employee logs. But Thursday night changed everything. She was stocking dairy when she heard the whimper. It was soft, softer than a baby's sigh, but it was definitely a whimper. Human, pained, coming from somewhere near the walk-in produce cooler. She froze, milk carton in hand, listening. Came again, slightly louder. Kayla crept toward the back. The cooler was always locked at night. Produce was delivered early in the morning, long after her shift. But the handle was wet. Not just condensation, sticky wet. She wiped her palm on her jeans and pulled the door open. The air was frigid, biting at her face like invisible claws. Inside, the produce shelves were empty except for a single crate of carrots. And lying on the floor was something that made her stomach twist. It was a name badge. Kyle's. She picked it up, her hands trembling. The tag was scratched, the plastic cracked. Kyle hadn't shown up for 2 nights in a row. But Dean had just said he probably quit. Kayla backed out of the cooler, slamming the door shut behind her. She turned and screamed. The figure stood at the far end of the hall, between the dairy aisle and the staff room door. Tall, slender. Its face, if it had one, was a blur of motion, like smudged paint over wet paper. Limbs too long. Head cocked at an unnatural angle. Kayla bolted. She didn't remember the sprint to the front entrance. She didn't register the alarm going off when she shoved through the emergency door. She didn't feel the concrete tear the skin from her knees when she fell outside. She just ran. She didn't go back for a week. When she did, it was only because Sarah called her. They found something, Sarah said, her voice low. They were replacing a walk-in cooler in the basement. Behind the drywall, they found old shelves, like really old. From another store, I guess. Kayla didn't respond. There were old food packages, tags with names on them. No one could explain it. And they found a freezer door. Another one? Yeah, but this one was sealed shut, like welded closed. And behind it, they heard knocking. Kayla ended the call and threw her phone in a drawer. She didn't want to know more. She didn't want to know who or what was knocking. But some nights, just past 3:13 a.m., when she stared out her apartment window toward the Southridge Market glowing in the distance, she swore she could hear it too. Kayla didn't talk to anyone about what happened. Not her mom. Not her best friend. Not even the sketchy guy she'd been kind of seeing who worked at the vape kiosk across from Southridge Market. Some truths were too brittle. If you spoke them aloud, they cracked, shattered, and took part of your sanity with them. But the image of that freezer door, sealed and buried behind drywall in the basement, haunted her like an itch in the back of her skull. She'd never seen it, but she dreamed about it. Always at 3:13 a.m., just like the real thing. In the dream, the door wasn't closed. It creaked open with a hiss of cold air and revealed a hallway, not a freezer compartment. The hallway was lined with shelves filled with rotting produce and flickering fluorescent lights overhead. At the end stood a mirror, and in the mirror was her reflection. Only it wasn't her. It was taller, bonier, its mouth too wide, smiling like it had something sharp to say. And the thing it said, every time, in a voice that sounded just like hers, was this: "You left me behind." She always woke up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding against her ribs like it wanted out. It was almost enough to make her leave town. She packed a bag twice, even looked up cheap bus tickets to visit her cousin in Vermont. But something made her stay. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was because Kyle's badge was still in her drawer, and she still couldn't shake the feeling that someone needed help. Someone alive. Or almost alive. A week later, she went back to Southridge Market. Not to work. She had officially quit and blocked Dean's number after he left her a single, half-hearted voicemail that sounded more annoyed than concerned. She went back because she needed answers, and the only person who might help her was Sarah. Kayla waited until the early morning shift, 5:45 a.m., just before the sun began to rise in a haze of bruised blue and orange. Sarah was at Register 1, as usual, sipping iced coffee like it was fuel for her soul. "You look like shit," Sarah said the moment Kayla walked in. "Good to see you too." They stood in silence for a moment while Kayla debated how much to say. Finally, she went with the truth. "I saw something," she said, "in the store. Something not human. And I think he didn't quit." Sarah's eyes darkened, her face losing that usual spark of sarcasm. She didn't laugh or joke this time. "I know. You know?" Kayla whispered. Sarah reached under the counter and pulled out her phone. She tapped through a few files and handed it over. It was a video, grainy, distorted, likely recorded from a basement security camera. In the footage, a figure walked through the stockroom. Tall, thin, gaunt. Kyle. His name badge gleamed briefly under the light. He was muttering to himself, pacing, as if trying to calm down. Then he stopped and turned, not toward the camera, toward something off-screen. He said something, but there was no audio. He took a step back, then another. Then he sprinted toward the freezer door at the back of the room. Just before he reached it, the footage glitched. Not a normal digital stutter, but warped like a magnet had passed across the screen. When it cleared, the door was shut, and Kyle was gone. The timestamp on the footage? 3:13 a.m. Kayla handed the phone back, her hands trembling. "You never told anyone?" "They'd call me crazy," Sarah said. "Hell, I started to think I imagined it until you said something. But there's more." "More?" Sarah leaned closer. "The guy who used to manage the night shift before Dean? Travis. He vanished too. Just stopped showing up one day. Same story. People assumed he quit. But I found his locker key in the mop closet. Want to see what's inside?" The logical part of Kayla's brain screamed no. The part of her that had been dreaming of freezer doors and hallways full of rot whispered yes. Locker 14. It smelled faintly of bleach and metal. Inside were 2 notebooks, both leather-bound, both heavy with handwritten notes. Pages dog-eared and stained. Kayla opened the first one. It wasn't a work journal. It was a log. February 8, 3:13 a.m. again. Door opened by itself. No one in aisle. Heard whispering. Not the air vents. Not hallucinating. Getting louder. February 10 night janitor Jerry said he saw a hand coming out of the produce cooler. Thought it was mine. I wasn't near the cooler. February 14 left raw chicken out as a test. Found it back inside freezer. Package torn open. Teeth marks. February 16 it watches. It learns. Don't speak to it. The rest of the entries got progressively worse. Shaky handwriting, phrases circled in red ink, drawings of long-limbed figures with blank faces. The second notebook was even more disturbing. A map of the store with markings in places that didn't exist. Arrows leading below. Notes that read there in the walls and it lives between the power hum. Kayla couldn't stop reading. And when she flipped to the last page, a piece of paper fell out. It was a photograph, black and white, aged, curled at the edges. It showed an old grocery store, maybe from the 1950s, with a hand-painted sign above the door that read Southridge Grocery and Meats. Standing in front were 4 men in butcher's aprons, all of them smiling, except the man on the far right. His face was blurred, not because of damage or bad lighting, but because it had no features. Just a smooth oval like someone had painted over it. Someone or something. Kayla handed the notebook to Sarah. Her mouth felt dry, her voice barely a whisper. "What is this place?" "I don't know," Sarah replied. "But I think the store was built over something. Something old. Something hungry." That night, Kayla did something she told herself she would never do. She broke into Southridge Market. It wasn't hard. She still had her old ID badge, and Dean never updated the system. The security code was still written on that same sticky note. And the cameras? They could be unplugged. She brought supplies. Flashlight, notebook, a crowbar, and Sarah, who had insisted on coming despite Kayla's protests. "We go in," Kayla said, standing in front of the storage room door. "We look, we find out what's behind that welded freezer. Then we get out." "That's it." Sarah nodded. "You first." The basement was cold. Colder than it should have been, even with the temperature controls. The air felt wet, like it had been exhaled by something that never learned how to breathe properly. They found the welded freezer easily. A tall silver slab sealed with steel braces and chains. But someone or something had already cut through one of the locks. Kayla looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Kayla. Then they pulled. The door screamed on its hinges. What lay beyond was not a freezer. It was a stairwell, narrow, slippery, lined with bricks that looked burned. At the bottom, darkness, thick and pulsing. They descended. One step, another. At the 10th step, Kayla thought she heard breathing. At the 15th, her flashlight flickered. At the 20th, the air changed. It didn't smell like a basement anymore. It smelled like earth, and meat, and iron. And then the flashlight died. They stopped. Total blackness. Sarah grabbed Kayla's hand. Then they heard it. A voice. Thin, raspy, childlike. "Help me." Kayla fumbled for her phone. Turned on the flashlight. The beam caught a figure sitting at the bottom of the stairs. Slumped. Thin. Wearing a torn work shirt. It was Kyle. Or what was left of him. His skin was pale and translucent. Eyes clouded like old milk. But he was breathing. Barely. "Don't let it touch you," he whispered. Behind them something clicked. Then moved. Not footsteps. Something like joints being forced to bend. Rubber bands snapping. A wet, shuffling drag. Sarah turned her light up the stairwell. And screamed. Something stood at the top. Tall. Faceless. Grinning with a mouth that was nowhere near where a mouth should be. Then it charged. There is a moment when fear stops being instinctive and starts to become something else entirely. An organism, alive inside you, clawing at the walls of your brain, howling for escape. That was what Kayla felt as the faceless thing at the top of the stairwell lunged toward them in a burst of impossible motion. She didn't have time to scream. Just enough time to grab Sarah by the collar and yank her down into the tunnel. They tumbled, limbs flailing, landing hard against the cold brick at the bottom. The phone's flashlight cracked. Darkness swallowed them whole. The air tightened. Behind them, the scraping sound began again. The thing was descending. Kayla reached blindly, found Kyle's limp arm, and dragged him into the darkened tunnel beyond the stairwell. She didn't know where it led. Didn't care. Only that it was away. Sarah was close behind, panting, whispering sharp bursts of panic. "Where are we? What is this? What is that thing? Oh God." The walls narrowed the farther they crawled. The air grew thick, humid. A foul stench rose with every step. Rot and sulfur and something sweet that didn't belong. They heard it behind them. Scraping. Breathing. The hum of freezer fans. Then a whisper. Not words. Not language. Just the sound of something mimicking speech, trying to remember how mouths work. Kayla turned the corner, half dragging Kyle's half-conscious body. And finally the tunnel opened into a chamber. A room. An old one. And what they saw inside was worse than anything they'd imagined. It had once been a storeroom. Brick-lined, domed like a silo. Its walls were hung with rusted meat hooks and rotted wooden beams. Bits of yellowed tile peeked through grime. Along the far wall there was a door. A wooden one, heavy, old. Beside it, markings. Symbols scratched into the surface with something sharp. Some resembled letters. Others looked like bones flattened into script. But none of that was the worst part. The worst part was what stood in the center of the room. A freezer. Not a new one. An ancient walk-in, dented and rust-streaked. Its door was open, and the inside glowed with an unnatural blue light. A low hum pulsed from within, like a living thing breathing in slow rhythm. And chained to the walls of the room others, for people, emaciated, eyes wide, vacant, mouths sewn shut with dark wire. Their chests rose and fell faintly. They were alive. Kyle stirred and whispered, "It feeds through them." Sarah clapped a hand over her mouth. Kayla stepped closer. The freezer's hum grew louder. Inside, instead of shelves, the freezer held meat. Unrecognizable, twisted, still pulsing, and a mirror on the back wall. She saw herself, but like in the dream, it wasn't her. It was taller, pale, its head tilted at the same angle as the thing on the stairs. It blinked slowly, and its smile widened. Then it stepped forward. Out of the mirror, Kayla screamed. The mirror cracked. Glass shattered across the floor as the reflection took shape. Thin as paper, but growing thicker, more solid. Its limbs were jointed backward, spider-like. No eyes, just a mouth. A wide, split smile lined with rows of teeth. Sarah threw a wrench left over from some long-forgotten maintenance shelf. It bounced off the creature's shoulder with a clang, but didn't slow it. Kyle groaned behind them. The reflection thing began crawling toward them, limbs scraping over broken glass. Kayla grabbed the only weapon she could find, a rusted meat hook, and stepped between it and the others. "You don't belong here," she said, though her voice cracked. The thing laughed, a broken sound like glass in a blender. Then it whispered, in her voice, "But you brought me back." What happened next was a blur. Kayla lunged. The meat hook pierced something soft, and the creature shrieked, the kind of sound that made blood run cold. It stumbled back, leaking something black and steaming. Sarah grabbed Kyle's arm, hoisting him upright. Together, the three of them moved toward the back of the chamber. Kayla kicked the freezer door shut behind them, and it roared, the blue light flashing like lightning. Then everything went still. For a moment, Kayla thought it was over. Until the door behind them, the one marked with those symbols, opened. No sound, no explosion, just a soft click. And behind it, stairs, upward. Fresh air drifted in. Warm air, sunlight. They didn't ask questions. They ran. They emerged behind the store, through a metal hatch hidden beneath a pile of old shipping crates. The hatch had been bolted from the inside, sealed long ago. The alley was bathed in early morning light. Birds sang. It didn't feel real. Kyle passed out the moment they reached the sidewalk. Sarah called an ambulance. Kayla just sat there, staring at the hatch, waiting, hoping it wouldn't open again. Didn't. Not that day. The police were skeptical, of course. They found Kyle in critical condition, dehydrated, with signs of prolonged confinement. They found the others too, barely alive, their mouths mangled from the wire. Southridge Market was shut down by noon, but no one believed Kayla or Sarah. Not really. The hallway? Torn down during construction. The freezer? Hauled off before anyone could examine it. The mirror? Gone. But the whispers never stopped. 2 weeks later, Kayla got a letter. No return address. Inside was a photo. The old grocery store again. Same 4 men. Only this time they were gone. Just the storefront. And the faceless man. Standing alone. Closer to the camera. As if he'd taken a step forward. The back of the photo read, "It's still open." That night, at exactly 3:13 a.m., her fridge opened by itself. Kayla stopped sleeping altogether. Every time she closed her eyes, she found herself standing inside that cold blue freezer, staring at the mirror, watching the other version of herself slink closer, that too wide smile cutting through the dark like a gash in fabric. But it wasn't just the dreams. It was the fridge. The oven timer going off at 3:13 a.m. without being set. The food inside her pantry molding overnight. The voices, faint, echoing under the whir of the air conditioning, always whispering the same thing. It's still open. It's still open. It's still open. She tried to rationalize, told herself it was trauma, paranoia, lack of sleep. But then she saw the man in the photo. In real life, it happened at the gas station near her apartment. She was filling up, hands trembling from too much caffeine and not enough rest, when she noticed a man standing at the corner by the dumpsters, wearing a white butcher's apron. Still, too still, his face wrong, blank, like the photo but now real, like someone had plucked a shadow from a photo album and pressed it into reality. She looked away. When she looked back, he was gone. Sarah didn't answer her texts anymore. After the police investigation, Sarah had been given a non-disclosure agreement, therapy vouchers, and a very polite recommendation to take time off. Last Kayla heard, she'd moved in with her sister in Michigan. Kyle, meanwhile, remained in a hospital bed, unresponsive. The doctors called it post-traumatic catatonia, but Kayla knew better. The thing had touched him, left something inside. The last time she visited him, he opened his eyes just long enough to whisper, "You didn't close the door." Then he flatlined. They brought him back, but he hadn't spoken since. Kayla spent her days researching. Southridge Market had changed ownership 3 times. Its original name was Southridge Grocery and Meats, opened in 1951, shuttered in 1963 after infrastructure issues. 2 employees had gone missing. No bodies were found. The lot remained empty for over 30 years before a new franchise took it over. She found old news clippings, a missing persons report, a photo of a smiling teen named Jody Ferris who worked part-time in 1962. Last seen heading into the basement stockroom. Another article about a lawsuit against the store's original owners. It was dismissed quietly. The article was trimmed short, almost like someone intentionally redacted part of it. She checked property records. A company named Hollow Earth Real Holdings owned the lot. A shell corporation. No phone number, no website. The building, now sealed, was slated for demolition. That's when Kayla made her decision. She wasn't going to run. She was going to destroy it. She gathered supplies. Bolt cutters, gasoline, a crowbar, 2 crowbars just in case. Her friend Lena, a bartender with a criminal streak and a love for weird shit, agreed to help. Kayla told her everything. To her surprise, Lena believed her. Sort of. "You think this place is haunted?" she asked, flicking her Zippo lighter. "Or like Hell's Costco?" Kayla nodded. "It's not a haunting. It's an opening. Like a portal? Like a wound." They waited until midnight. Then they broke in. The building was darker than she remembered. The power had been cut, but the lights still hummed faintly, as if something was still feeding it from the inside. They pried open the back door, moved through the aisles, their footsteps echoing unnaturally. At 3:12 a.m., they reached the freezer section. The doors were closed, all except the one on the far left. Open. Waiting. Lena swallowed hard. That's welcoming. Kayla didn't hesitate. She stepped inside. It was just frozen peas. Frozen pizza. The usual. Until the lights went out. And the mirror appeared again, on the back wall where there hadn't been one before. Kayla turned to Lena. "Stay outside." "Not a chance." The mirror rippled like water. Then someone stepped out. Kayla braced. But it wasn't the tall, faceless thing this time. It was Jody Ferris, the girl from the 1962 newspaper clipping. Pale, young, her eyes wide, mouth sewn shut. But she moved like a puppet, arms dangling at her sides. Kayla stepped back. The girl opened her mouth. The wire fell away like threads burnt from the inside. And she whispered, "You can't burn it. It already happened." "What do you mean?" "It feeds on the attempt." Kayla turned. The freezer was gone. So was Lena. Just the mirror remained. And her own reflection. But not her. Not quite. The thing grinned. Its teeth were made of glass. And then it spoke. "It's not the building. It's not the freezer. It's you." The fire never spread. Kayla lit 3 cans of gasoline-soaked cloth and tossed them into the mirror. The flames licked the glass, turned it red, but didn't crack it. Instead, the glass swallowed the flames, absorbed them, then reflected them. Fire burst toward her, heatless but searing. She screamed and woke up in her apartment. Morning. Lena on the couch, blood dried around her nose. What happened? Kayla gasped. I don't know, Lena said. We went in, right? But then nothing. Just dark. Then I woke up here. You don't remember the mirror? No. Just a humming. And then a voice that said, "We found her." Kayla stood, walked to the fridge. It was open. Inside, everything had turned black. Even the light. It was never about the store. Kayla realized that now. It was about the idea of the store, something fixed in space but not in time. Southridge Market wasn't just a place where things were sold. It was a threshold, disguised in tiles and shelves and daily specials. An entrance, a lure, a structure built over something that hungered for repetition. She stared at the dark fridge in her apartment. It wasn't plugged in anymore. She'd yanked the cord days ago. The entire thing should have been dead. But every morning, the door swung open by itself at 3:13 a.m., and inside was not food. It was her reflection. Not her actual reflection. The other one, smiling, closer now. It no longer waited for her in dreams. It lived in the waking world. Kayla checked herself into a motel under a fake name. She smashed her phone, ditched her car, cut her hair with kitchen scissors. She traveled north, staying off the interstate, avoiding supermarkets, fridges, and anything with polished glass. But the reflection followed. She saw it in gas station mirrors, in puddles on the side of the road, in the shimmer of windows as buses passed. Always grinning, always silent, like it was waiting for permission. On the fifth night, she woke up in the motel bathroom. She didn't remember walking there, didn't remember turning on the light. The mirror was fogged. She reached to wipe it clean, and her fingers met another hand. From the inside, she screamed, stumbled back, shattered the mirror with the heel of her palm. Blood ran down her wrist like ink. She laughed, sobbed, laughed again. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. She was marked. Back in her apartment, Lena found a note on Kayla's fridge. "It's not haunted. It's happening again. I didn't stop it. I made it worse. Don't look in the mirror. Don't answer the door at 3:13. Don't shop alone." Lena didn't know what to make of it. Kayla was gone. No voicemail, no texts, just the note and the smell in the apartment, a cold metallic scent like old meat. She considered calling the police. But then the fridge door opened by itself. And she remembered the walk-in freezer in the basement. The sound of something crawling. The hum. She backed out of the apartment. Never went back. 2 towns over, a new grocery store opened in a remodeled building. Polished tile, a brand new bakery section, 24/7 operation. It was called Ever Fresh. Bright colors. Happy jingle. All so pristine you could eat off the floor. On its first night, during the 3 a.m. stocking shift, a janitor went missing. They found his mop, not his body. The freezer doors were open when they got there. Every single one. And someone had written a word on the inside glass in condensation. Reflection security footage showed nothing, just static. And at exactly 3:13 a.m., every camera feed turned to black. Then back again. For one frame, one single frame, enough to see her, Kayla, or the thing that wore her face, staring straight into the lens. Smiling. She walks now, through places where the fluorescent lights buzz a little too long, where the air feels just slightly off like a draft coming from somewhere that shouldn't exist. She stands at the end of freezer aisles, watches from bathroom mirrors, smiles at you from the polished metal of deli counters. If you shop late, especially after midnight, you might see her. You might hear the humming. You might feel the chill on your neck, the whisper in your ear that doesn't match your breath. You might glance at your watch and notice the time, 3:13 a.m. And if the freezer door opens on its own, don't look inside. Because once you see her, you're marked. And the store never really lets you leave. It just follows you home. The store was shut down. But now, it's happening again. Different town, different name, same freezer. So if you ever hear a door open behind you while shopping late at night, don't turn around. Because she might be smiling at you.